All right, Shalom. It's your brother Kushab coming back at you with another lesson. And before I get started, I want to give our praises, glory, infinite honors unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rechak, Wadash, and double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who taught me this truth and rule well. And peace, blessings, and salutations be to the hopefully elect, as well as those that believe in the gospel, and may you endure to the end, Lord willing. All right, and I just want to get into a quick lesson. All right, basically, the title I had in mind was utilizing wisdom is not complicated, because contrary to popular belief, people think that when you use the wisdom and knowledge from among high, that it's just, this high stature, or, it's just way far out than people think, right? In which, really and truly using wisdom, all right, is making simple decisions, decisive decisions, all right, quick decisions, but things are that most of the time is simple. All right, I'm gonna get a few accounts. They may seem deep, but at the end of the day, when you believe Yahweh Bashim Al Shah is dealing with you, all right, through the spirit, you'll see that these decisions, all right, it wasn't some long, drawn out, hard decision. All right. These are things that when you use the wisdom and knowledge that we have learned, all right, you make decisions based off of what? The wisdom and knowledge that we have, right? Which let me start off with that. This is Romans chapter 15 and verse 4. It says, "For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope." All right. So you read in the NLT, it says, "Such things were written in the scriptures long ago to teach us." And the scriptures gives us hope and encouragement as we wait patiently for God's promises to be fulfilled. You see? So everything that's written in the Bible, all right, is written for a reason. All right. It's written for our learning. All right. It's written for us to take, all right, learn from it and apply it to, maybe situations that we have to go into. All right. Things, afflictions and things that we might go through, right? Concerning just different walks of life. All right. Now, all throughout the scriptures, you have accounts of men using wisdom. All right. And you have men not using wisdom. All right. But, I'm going to pull a few accounts of, wisdom and, Lord willing, to be edifying. All right. And I just want to put this lesson out there, for brothers who may think that, overthinking, using wisdom. All right. Or applying wisdom. All right. It's not that long, far, and drawn out, man. All right. It's more on the simple side. All right. Because even the scriptures speak about the simplicity in Yahushua. All right. And I got an account lined up with Yahushua himself using wisdom. Right. And even in his time on the planet Earth, he had spiritual powers, man. All right. Reading people's minds and this, that, and the third, but he still had moments, all right, when you read the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, all right, John, where he just used wisdom, all right? But let's start off with the Proverbs, all right? Tripping. This Proverbs chapter 9 and verse 10. It says, "The fear of the Lord Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy understanding." All right. So, first things first, you got to fear the Lord. All right. You got to have that reverence. All right. Respect unto the name of the Lord. All right. Knowing, we understand and truly know who Yahweh is. Right. We know who Yahweh Shai is. Okay. And as Yahweh Shai sups with us. All right. That's how we obtain wisdom. All right. It's not the other way around. We have to go through Yahushua. He's the one who gives us the spirit. All right. The Rakakwadash. All right. For us to learn and grow through the spirit. All right. And how our wisdom, gets on a higher and higher level. All right. And you see men that have been in this thing, X amount of years, different elders, and, you be around them and you can see how they operate, how they discern things, and a lot of things and utilizing wisdom is just quick decision making. All right. Going against the grain of the world and going with the grain of Yahweh Bashim El Shai. You see? Now, verse 11, it says, "For by me thy days shall be multiplied, and thy years and the years of thy life shall be increased." By what? Wisdom. You see? It says, "If thou be wise, thou shalt be wise for thyself. But if thou scornest, thou shalt bear it alone." All right? You know, and if you read in the NLT, it says, if you become wise, you will be the one to benefit. All right? And, you know, that's the best benefit that we can have on this side. All right? Is Yahweh Shai and, you know, him supping with us, giving us the Rikakwadash, all right, so that we can obtain and, you know, grow through the spirit, you know. But I want to get this account, all right, it's in First Kings, of course, you know, with Solomon, all right, because, you know, after he prayed to the Lord, you know, for the wisdom that he can govern. Excuse me. Give me some water or something. But, you know, after he prayed to the Lord, you know, for the wisdom, all right, and understanding that he can govern his people, all right, the Lord presented him with an opportunity, all right, to, you know, basically show that wisdom, right? Now it says in 1 Kings chapter 3 and verse 16, it says, "Then came there two women that were harlots unto the king and stood before him." All right. Now, like Apostle Gabar, you know, something, you know, that sticks with me. All right. He says you have to visualize. All right. Being a visionary, you have to, you know, actually see what's going on in the scriptures, man. All right. You have to actually put yourself there, visualize it, right? So you have to visualize being there, all right, with King Solomon, you know, standing by him, seeing two harlots come in, all right, and just listen to the story that they're saying. You see, it says, "Unto the king and stood before him," verse 17, "and the one woman said, O my Lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house," right? You have to see this, right? So one lady is telling you, all right, look, we lived together, basically, all right? And I gave birth to a baby while, you know, she was still living with me, okay? It says, verse 18, "And it came to pass the third day after that I was delivered, that this woman was delivered also," all right? So basically, you know, they both had children, all right? And it says, "And we were together, and there was no stranger with us in the house, save we two in the house. And this woman's child died in the night because she overlaid it," all right? You know, she basically, the child suffocated or whatnot, all right? So you just picture yourself standing there, all right, listening to this, all right? It says, "And she arose at midnight and took my son from beside me while thine handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom," right? So, you know, of course, you know, these are Israelites, all right? And it doesn't say that in the scriptures, but, you know, I perceive that through the spirit, you know, me speaking as a man, you know, because what the other woman did basically supplanted, you know, the other woman, right? You know, thinking that she was going to be stupid or whatnot, right? But it says, verse 21, "And when I rose in the morning to give my child suck, behold, it was dead. But when I had considered it in the morning, behold, it was not my son, which I did bear," right? Now, a woman is going to know, all right, which child is her child, man. You know how they have that saying in the world, a woman knows, you know, when they first give birth to a child, you know, you look at the child, you know, it's nothing that'll change the feeling of you knowing, all right, that that's your child, you know, and but that's what the woman say, right? It says, verse 22, "And the other woman said, Nay, but the living is my son, and the dead is thy son. And this said, No, but the dead is thy son, and the living is my son. Thus they spake before the king." So you have basically one woman saying, no, that's hers. All right, that she has a dead son, and my son's a living one, vice versa. You know, Verse 23. It says, then said the king, the one said, this is my son that liveth, and thy son is dead. And the other said, nay, but thy son is the dead, and my son is the living. All right. Now, this is where wisdom comes in. All right. This is where the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, all right, comes in. All right. Which, you know, we understand that Solomon is Yahushai through the reincarnation. All right. But, you know, like I alluded to earlier, this is right after Solomon prayed and asked the Lord for the wisdom, all right, and the understanding heart that he can govern the people, right? So it says, this is the to show you that it's not complicated, all right? This is a quick decision, you see? So any person, right, like it'll be easy for us to say this, right? Let me say that too, all right? It's easier said than done to make a decision like this as the king. All right. But how can you make a decision like this unless what? You have the wisdom from among high. Right. It says, and the king said, bring me a sword. And he brought a sword before the king. And the king said, divide the living child in two and give half to the one and half to the other. All right. Now, any woman, all right, whose son is alive and not dead, all right, she's going to weep. She's going to mourn and say, no, please don't kill my child. Right. But if your child is already dead, then you don't really care. Right. Now it says, verse 26, then spake the woman whose the living child was unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son, and said, oh, my Lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. But the other said, let it be neither mine nor thine, but divided. You see? And that's how you use wisdom. All right. Apply it to a situation to get the right outcome. Right. Because no woman in their right mind wants to see their child get put to death, man. You know? But if her responses be, let it be neither mine nor thine, all right, that shows you that who's the child is actually for. You see? But how can a decision be made like that unless you have what? The wisdom, all right? And, you know, it's not a super complicated, you know, over the top, right, decision. It's very simple. You see? Like I said earlier, the simplicity in Yahushua, right? It's very simple, right? If you cut the child in two, the child going to be dead, all right? The child who the woman is actually for, she's going to mourn, all right, and weep for it, you see? Now, verse 26 in the NLT, it says, then the woman who was the real mother of the living child and who loved him very much cried out, oh, no, my Lord, give her the child and please do not kill him. But the other woman said, all right, he will neither be yours nor mine. Divide him between us. You see? Verse 27, it says, then the king said, do not kill the child, but give him to the woman who wants him to live, for she is the mother. When all Israel heard the king's decision, the people were in awe of the king, for they saw the wisdom our power had given him for rendering justice, right? And, you know, as it says in Habakkuk 1, all right, and 5, that, you know, the Lord is going to work a work in your day, that though it be told to you, yet you will not believe, you know. This is the same wisdom that the men of the Lord, you know, possess now, all right? Decisions like this are going to have to be made at a quicker rate, all right, at a higher scale, right? Because we're not in a state of a king anymore, all right? We'll all become servants, all right? We've all been put in slavery, right? So when Jacob's trouble and all of these different things happen, all right, these last prophecies come to be fulfilled, we're going to have the wisdom to, you know, actually get through those times, all right? Pursuant to Isaiah 33 in verse 6, it says, and wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times, you see? And strength of salvation, for the fear of Yahweh is his treasure. So when you read in the NLT, it says, in that day, he will be your sure foundation. Who? Yahushua. All right. The rock, you know, it says, providing a rich store of salvation, wisdom, and knowledge. The fear of the Lord will be your treasure. You see? So the wisdom and knowledge is what's going to keep us stable. Us actually understanding and knowing the times that we're in, that's going to keep us stable. You see? Just having the wisdom from among high, that's going to keep us stable. When everybody's going to be losing their minds, all right, knowing and understanding the secrets of the Lord, these things are going to keep us stable. You see? It's not complicated. It's not something that's like I keep saying, just fall out over the top. I gotta get deep. I gotta get deep. It's not like that, man. You know, it's things just as simple as this, just as having it, obtaining it, right? Holding on to it. It's just simple things as such that's gonna help us get to the chariots, man. You know. But I want to go into this other count, all right, with King David, all right? And we all know how mighty King David was, all right? This First Samuel, let me see what I had, 21 and 15, all right? Whew. I'm going to start up a little bit. Right, so this is, I start at 10, all right? It says, and David arose and fled that day for the field of Saul and went to Achish, the king of Gath. And the servants of Achish said unto him, is not this David, the king of the land? Did they not sing one to another of him in dances, saying, Saul has slain his thousands, and David has 10,000s? And David laid up these words in his heart and was so afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. All right, now, the verse previous to this, in verse 11, it said that David killed tens of thousands of men. All right. At one time, in battle, we know that David was a mighty man. All right. And he really and truly probably could have, took these men out. Right. But instead of, relying on a carnal sense, he took the spiritual path and did what? He used wisdom. You see? Now, one would think that this is something, deep. Oh, David, he went to doing all of this and, but no, all he did was just play. All he did was just play him, man. All right. He just, started acting retarded, and that's why I brought out earlier that, we Jacob, all right. The word Jacob means to supplant. All right. We are natural supplanters, man. So using wisdom, all right, especially now in these times, it's going to come off as I don't want to say easy, but, it's going to be a simple thing, It's going to be natural, right? So in verse 13, it says, he changed his behavior before them and feigned himself mad in their hands and scrabbled on the doors of the gate and let his spittle fall down upon his beard. Right. So in the NLT, it says, so he pretending to be insane, scratching on the doors and drooling down his beard. Finally, King Achish said to his men, must you bring me a madman? We already have enough of them around here. Why should I let someone like this be my guest? You see? So instead of him just, finding a way to get to his sword, he did what? He used wisdom. He acted like he was retarded. And the king was like, hey, man, get him out of here. At a time when Saul was, basically pursuing him, That's why I said in verse 10 that David arose and fled that day for the fear of Saul. You see? So he could have easily rose up against the king of Achish, all right, and his men. But nah, he used wisdom, you see? So it's not as far out, I'm going to keep saying it, and as complicated as Jake may think, man, because, I myself used to think like that, when I was first coming in, in the camp, right? And I was first started coming around, like, man, I want, I gotta have wisdom, gotta have wisdom. But, as you kind of grow older and start to mature, after a couple years, in the camp, you realize that obtaining wisdom and making daily decisions, all right, these things are not hard. It's not something that's long, drawn, complicated, and far out, man. It's utilizing what we have been taught, all right, and the accounts and different things that we have in the scriptures, man. It's not crazy. Sometimes wisdom, you can be using wisdom by not saying nothing, man. And we gonna get that. That account with Yahushua, Matthew 26. All right. right? Because at the end of the day, what was that, 59? We understand that, everything is governed by the Lord himself. So whatever's going to happen is supposed to happen, but we have to do our part in doing what? Applying wisdom, you know, using the knowledge and the understanding that we have learned and the things that we have been taught. All right. Now this Matthew 26 and 59, it says, "Now the chief priests and the elders and all the council sought false witnesses against Yahushua to put him to death, but found none. Yea, though many false witnesses came, yet found they none. At least at the last came two false witnesses, and said, This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of the Most High and build it in 3 days. All right, in which, we are the temples, but let me get the point. All right, verse 62, "And the high priest arose and said unto him, Answerest thou nothing? What is it which these witnesses against thee? But Yahushua held his peace. And the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure by the living power that thou tell us whether thou be Hamashiach, the son of the Most High. But Yahushua said unto him, Thou hast said. And nevertheless I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. And then the high priest rent his clothes, saying, He has spoken blasphemy. For what further need we have of witnesses? Behold, now ye have heard these blasphemies." All right. In which he didn't even say much or nothing. We all know that they conspired, all right, in order to, have Yahushua, put to death, ultimately to fulfill prophecy. I want to jump down to the part where Pontius, he basically said, I find this man innocent. He's not guilty. All right. Right. But even that whole time, Yahushua ain't say nothing, And when he did say something, it wasn't nothing crazy, But he said he just stood there and took it. Why? Because he understood prophecy. He understood the times that, he already had prayed to the Father, So he had to go through, and finish the mission. Right. And this Matthew 27 and 11, it says, "And Yahushua stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, Art thou the king of the Jews? And Yahushua said unto him, Thou sayest." You see? And when he was accused of the chief priests and the elders, he answered nothing. He didn't say a word. You see? Verse 13, "Then when Pilate unto him, Hearest thou not how many things they witness against thee? He answered him to never a word. Insomuch that the governor marveled greatly." You see? I'm going to jump down a little bit. All right. I'm going to jump to 23. All right. "And the governor said, Why? What evil had he done? But they cried out the more, saying, Let him be crucified." Right. So it wasn't nothing that the crowd, could find him guilty of. Yahushua was innocent of everything, man, but he didn't say anything, Now we understand ultimately that it was the will of Yahweh that had to be done, which is why he didn't say anything. Right. But sometimes just not saying nothing, all right, just escaping from a situation, is better than trying to sit there and deal and counsel with it, It says, "But when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, and he could prevail nothing, but that rather a tumult was made, and he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. See ye to it." So he washed his hands. All right. He said, "Hey man, I'm innocent of this. This man is innocent." When all Yahushua did was he healed the sick. All right. He preached. He did the will of Yahweh, man. But furthermore, just backing up the points of the other accounts, using wisdom ain't complicated, man. Sometimes if you don't say nothing, that's using wisdom, You don't have to sit there and try to finesse everything, every little single thing, you know. But I'm going to end it off in Sirach 6. It's a little long, but I'm going to read through it. All right. This is the book of Sirach, Ecclesiasticus chapter 6. um, I'm going to just get 26. You know, I could start at 20, but I'll just get 26 and read down a little bit. I didn't want to go this long, but, you know, it's all good. It says, Sirach 6 and 26, come unto her with thy whole heart and keep her raised with all thy power. Search and seek, and she shall be made known unto thee. It's talking about women. I mean, not women, that woman wisdom, all right? You know, which brothers, you know, down here, you know, we say Sophia, man, you know. It says, and when thou hast got hold of her, let not her go. It's talking about wisdom, right? It says, for at the last thou shalt find her rest, and that shall be turned to thy joy. Then shall her fetters be a strong defense for thee. You see, the wisdom is going to be a defense for us, all right? It says, and her chains a robe of glory, for there is a golden ornament upon her, and her bands of purple lace. And thou shalt put her on as a robe of honor, and shalt put her about thee as a crown of joy. You see? And that's what, you know, obtaining wisdom will ultimately lead to. You know, our salvation, man, you know, using it in the sense of righteousness, using it in the sense of the times of Jacob's trouble and, you know, this, so forth and so on, you know, Lord willing, that he cast not the spirit away, you know. But that's pretty much the point, man. You know, so with that, you know, call Allah Imla, Yahweh Bashim Yahushua Bashir Hakodash.